we live in a world which is not functioning as God intends it. Therefore, there are things that happen, and people are still living in a mindset and belief system that is more attached to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil than is the tree of life, which has fruit in season continually, and the leaves of the healing of the nations, or for healing in that sense. So if people do not live according to the truth, then they live under less than conditions, and therefore the early church, they did live in a transition period between the old and the new, and there was persecution that Jesus said would happen. And you know, there are people in the world who are not operating in a godly way, therefore they have free will, if you like, to function, and they may do some negative things. And God, although will bring good out of everything negative that happens, doesn't stop everything negative happens, because that would mean taking away people's choice. You know, people can choose. He wants them to choose good, but they'd sometimes choose bad. But then he will try and bring good out of the bad and continue to rewrite the story, if you like, to enable eventually everything good to come. So we need to know who we are and know our protection, our provision, and our direction in God, you know, because that's where it comes from, in relationship with God and trusting in him, and not trying to provide those things for ourselves. So a lot of people are living in fear of death, fear of everything. All that fear does is brings upon them what they fear. You know, Hebrews talks about that people were in bondage their whole lives because of fear of death. And if people have the power to live and bring upon them what they fear, then fear is a powerful thing, and we need to make sure perfect love casts that fear. So only when we're living in perfect love are we going to live in the fullness of God's blessing. And we're in a process of renewal and transformation to bring us into that reality, where we truly actually do believe in the reality of who God is and who we are, and therefore won't be subject to those things. And, you know, I've got to be honest, a lot of the things of health and well-being and provision and protection, you know, I live in every day. Now, occasionally something will happen that causes me to ask a question. Why did that happen? Was that something God intended? Was that something I brought upon myself? Was that someone attacking me, trying to do bad? Okay, why did that happen when I should be protected? Sometimes it's because maybe I've got complacent with believing and living in the reality of protection. You know, that some things can happen. And sometimes I may have caused those things to happen by things that I've done or said or not done or not said, you know. So it's a complicated issue. I do believe ultimately, as we fully mature in sonship, we live in immortality and therefore won't die and won't be subject to those things. But most people aren't there yet. Most people are still expecting to die and not have an expectation of immortality. So if they expect to die, they will die, you know, unless God does something miraculous and translates them or whatever, you know. So some of it is about what do we believe and what we do we look for as the future to actually see the reality of coming into that. So it's not easy. I know it's not easy when suffering takes place and things happen and bad things happen to good people and all of that. Now, God sometimes does use the suffering to bring about change. Now, he's not using sickness or he's not bringing it. But if something happens to me negatively and I ask the question and I find out why, then it causes me to grow and overcome it. And I will be stronger after it than I was before it. Because if it didn't happen, I wouldn't have realized I was weak in that area, in that vulnerability. So sometimes God allows the things to happen in a limited way to show me there's a vulnerability so I can actually deal with it. Then I will grow stronger and overcome. You know, we grow through trials and tribulations in a way. I don't think God wants us to live that way, but we're in a thing where we have to learn to overcome and subdue. So some of those are opportunities of growth. And a lot of it is the way we see things. Is this an obstacle or is this an opportunity? And two people can look at the same situation from different perspectives, and one can see it as negative and one can see it positive. I just generally choose to see everything as a positive. Even if something negative happens, then I'm going to see something positive come out of it. I'm going to learn something. I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to grow, you know. But ultimately, I think it's about our trust in God. And if something negative happens, does it shake our trust in God's goodness? Because if it does, then we don't really know God. Because our trust couldn't be shaken if we truly know him, truly know him, because we know what he's like. And therefore, if something negative happens, it wouldn't affect how we see God. But it is complicated.